Welcome to the HR Empowerment Podcast, where we will uncover strategies and new insights from HR professionals who discuss up-to-date regulations, best practices, and the most pressing topics like diversity and equity, leadership, dealing with difficult situations, and much more that affect your bottom line and business. Thanks for joining us.
Hey everybody, Wendy Sellers, the HR lady, back with my co-host, JC. Hey JC.
Hey there.
I am loving our conversation today with our awesome, amazing, motivational and humorous guest, John Barrico. Hey John, how you doing?
I'm doing fantastic.
Hey, we were just talking about burnout, which is like, a flame. And the interesting thing is, what's the name of your company or your motto, your logo? Share your fire.
Share your fire. It's all about that motivational spark that keeps us going, right? And how we treat each other that helps to allow others to keep their motivational fire burning as well.
That's awesome. I love it. It's interesting that there could be fire on either side, right? But you can turn people around from being burnt out or negative or unengaged simply through communication, but it has to be useful. It has to be planned out, and there has to be a lot of it all the time. Yes, folks, all the time. So give our listeners some advice about building and keeping a resilient team. Let's assume we're pulling them away from burnout. We're already getting there. They're not working 60 hours a week. Maybe you're paying them appropriately. I hope so. What's next? What can we do to make sure that we not only keep our team, but make sure that they are resilient and don't get burned out?
So there are so many aspects to the corporate culture, right? The organizational environment that people are working in that help them to determine in their own, because again, motivation is internal and intrinsic to oneself, but to enable to them to feel like what they're doing actually matters. And that is a real key. So, what I found over the course of my 40 plus year career in communications and understanding how people work together, here's what I've discovered. There are a couple of elements that make a team really work. The most important of those is trust. There's got to be trust from both sides of the spectrum. Now, I worked for an organization where the organization the leadership put 10% of their budget towards projects that were most likely going to fail. Now, that sounds kind of weird.
Yeah.
But what basically said was, hey, there's a good chance this might not work. But if you could make this work, it will be a game changer. I'm encouraging you to give it your best shot. I trust you are going to put your energy into this and try to make this work. And because of that, I am not going to beat you up for it, right? So trust is that very, very first thing, right? You have to know who it is you're working for. You've got to trust them. You've got to trust that they're going to do the job that you have hired them for, and they've got to trust that you're going to treat them well and give them a good work environment. So trust is that first piece. The next piece is to empower them to go ahead actually and do the work that you hired them to do. So many times we like to hire people. We go through this whole HR process, screening people, make sure they've got the skill set, et cetera, and then you micromanage them to death. No. Trust them to do their job and empower them to take the risks and to move forward. And then hold them accountable for it. Accountability is another key piece of this, right? Because if the project fails, fine, because you expected that it might. You gave them trust and you empowered them to give it a shot. They gave it a shot. They did their best and you hold them accountable. But if they didn't do their best and they just let the project die on the vine, hold them accountable for it. Because if people don't see accountability, then well, why should I work hard if that person's going to get reward for not succeeding, right? Yeah. And then the final piece of that is making sure that what they're doing, that they understand that what they do makes a difference.
That's hard in some trying to put it politely, in some organizations where things are secret, either because it's crappy management or because, it really does need to be something that's secret. So it's hard to always be saying, hey, what you do does matter. But for the most of us in the world, you can see like, hey, the customer wrote this and that's because of you, even though you don't talk to the customer.
Right.
They wrote something good or they wrote something bad. Exactly.
Everything. If you think about it, everything everybody does actually matters. It makes a difference someplace, right? Even if it just made somebody else feel good. Right. So the fact that you smiled at the person at the barista at the coffee place and they smiled at the next customer because of that. Look at that. Look at the impact that you made. Everything you do matters. And sometimes we just forget to let people know that what they do matters. So this is what's so important. And those are the things, the elements I talked about: trust, empowerment, accountability, and making a difference. That's the acronym for TEAM.
Oh, yes. It's funny. I was writing it down. I was trying to talk and write it down at the same time. And I put it matters instead of matters, TEAM. I love it. I love acronyms. They're so much easier to remember, but it's the truth. And I want to go back though to the accountability piece, folks.
Yes.
Because the accountability, it is not easy to hold people accountable. But accountable, when people are held accountable, they become accountable. And so it gets easier. But many people, when they're first being held accountable, are going to take that as a negative. They're going to be stressed. Stress leads to turnover. Stress leads to, absenteeism or stayism, but they're not really doing that much. Go ahead, JC.
Yeah, it's also a testament to like the digital world that we're in right now. Like sometimes when you had that level of stress taking place and you could see someone in person, you could physically feel their vibe, look them in the eye. You were immersed in that moment with them, where in the digital space, that person might be in their headspace. They're not with you.
Yes.
You're not sensing their whole person. So it puts you in this mindset of like, at the same time of being held accountable or accounting accordingly and leveling that playing field, it almost harkens to circling back to communication so that we understand everyone's emotional intelligence and their integrity in the moment so that it's clear, hey, this one's going to hurt, but it's not going to hurt my feelings, or I'm approaching this in a sense of radical candor. I don't know. Put it out there. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I think it all comes down to strong relationships, and that starts with getting to know your team, getting your team to get to know each other. Maybe not personally, but at least on the peripheral level. Not everybody wants you to dive into their personal life, but building those strong relationships so that when you are being held accountable, that you still feel safe. Like, oh, my manager's holding me accountable, but it's for the good of the team. And, they're not ripping me a new one in front of everyone else.
Empathy
That's
and
the
compassion.
Trust part. Yeah, that's the trust part. Like, I trust that if I do something wrong, you're going to tell me and help me get through it, but you're not going to embarrass me. And that's where, to me, that's where the trust and the empathy, the empowerment, the accountability, and how, yes, what you do matters all comes together in one happy bow. And it's super easy, right, John?
Easy? No, it does. It takes some practice. And it takes, what it really takes most of? Humility.
Yeah, it really does. Oh, that's a great word. Thank you for that, for sharing that word. And thanks for listening to episode 4 of our 5-part series on motivational leadership / humility. In our next episode, we're going to cover attracting talent through leadership. Tune in tomorrow. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for joining the HR Empowerment Podcast, brought to you by Aurora Training Advantage. We hope you've gained new insight and strategies to navigate the HR profession. We look forward to you joining us again on the HR Empowerment Podcast.